Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. In my previous video, I talked a little bit about how a lot of the arts are going into the corporate world, especially with how New York recently, they had a new arts program that created a lot of jobs for young artists. Today, I'm here to do a deeper dive into the idea and talk to someone who's been interested in the arts for a long time now. They're currently in art school and preparing themselves for a career in the art. Mumtahina, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Mumtahina Nabila. I am going to be a sophomore at Parsons University next fall. I've mostly been a painter. I'm very good at watercolor and well versed in oil and acrylic painting. But recently I started using spray can, which has been really fun because I started working with murals and stuff.
Do you have like a career goal?
I did, and then I don't, and then
Okay.
I'm trying to find it again. I think when I was in high school, the reason I stayed in the arts because I went to an art high school, special ed high school, and it did not really inform a lot about like the art world that's out there and like the opportunities that are out there for you because they're mostly focused on teaching you technique and like laying down the basics. But after school, I took this program at a gallery and called Q, where I actually ended up working while I was in last year. So the year before the pandemic, that gallery had a program which enabled me to like meet artists and curators and gallery directors and stuff to kind of better understand like how the art market works so that like you can envision yourself as an artist working and sustaining yourself through the arts in a very like gallery oriented path. So I kind of so it when I was a senior in high school I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to art college. I'm gonna do my MFA in art and like fine arts, figure out my style, and then become a gallery artist and have a studio and just make art and hopefully make it.
It's good that you like have a pretty clear path, I would say, on where you want to be
Yeah.
in the future. Let's first start by going back to your roots. What got you interested in arts in the first place?
My mom is an artist. She used to do like watercolor paintings, like huge ones when I was little. She stopped painting when we got here because she had to like work and being a single parent, like she didn't have a lot of time and she kind of lost like her belief in her art, I think, because she'd had it in practice so many years and like she was the reason that like I would always try to draw. In middle school I had an art teacher who encouraged me to stay with it because she was like, well, you're good at it when you kind of focus on it. I think when you create you can't like make yourself stop creating because it's like every drawing is like learning a new thing, so it's always fun, so you don't want to stop doing it. So if someone's like, well, you can go to school for it and then later get paid for it, it's like you're like, well, this is something I always want to keep doing. But I think I got into it because of my mom.
Yeah, I actually find it really interesting that it was your mom that got you into the arts. I had no idea she used to like do watercolor and
Yeah,
she was slash is a nurse, right?
she has been a medical assistant, yeah, for like a really long time.
Your mom's like shifting from like, I guess like focusing on the arts and then to like focusing more on like, STEM. I noticed that a lot of like the US like systemized education, they have like a heavy emphasis on like STEM and things like that. So what are your thoughts about like how STEM is so like popularized in American education? Did you feel the pressure to go switch to STEM growing up? Did it discourage you from going into the art? Do you feel like at any point she kind of like discouraged you from doing arts and instead going to STEM? How
I
was that
don't
like?
think so. No, I think she's as an artist would never really be like, oh, like you shouldn't make art. I think she kind of passed her dream on to me. I don't think she chose STEM. It was more of a like accessible job for her rather than being an artist, because being an artist is she doesn't even today like really understand like how you could make that into a career. It's a bit out of reach or from where she stood. Also she was like a single mom, she had rent to pay, like she, and yeah, no, I think she was always supportive of me being in the arts. It's interesting that you like separate the sciences and the arts because I feel like art is influenced by science a lot of times, and art is influenced by like every subject there is. And I think that's what kind of keeps drawing me back to art. I don't know. When I was in high school, I did think I was gonna go into science just because I was like what I liked studying. But it's like you could also make it a part of your art practice if you wanted. I'm actually thinking about switching to. I'm a fine arts major right now, but I'm kind of thinking about switching to integrative design, which would let me do my fine arts, but also have way more emphasis on like research, which could be from anything to like history to like technology, which I would later be implementing into my art practice. I think like recently we were listening to something that this psychologist was talking about creative people, and he was like, the artist is like where the creativity and the intellect meet is like the artist. So I think you have to have both interest in at least like both. You can't just be like, I don't know, draw. I think powerful pieces come from a lot of heart and soul, and intellect is like part of that.
Yeah, you bring up a good point that like for your mom, she kind of like passed on her dreams of being an artist onto you. And she basically like chose to be a medical assistant because it is more accessible. Like my first thought when you said that is like, yeah, like being a like single mom, like you have to do what you have to do to pay rent and things like that and feed your children. And so it's incredible that she made that sacrifice her dream basically to raise you and your brothers.
It's only when you go to an art school or when you have an artist or you have access to the arts that you know about these careers. Even kids know about these careers. It's just those kids are raised in environments that are saturated with the arts, or they have a family that is in the arts. Also, a problem of like us needing higher education. There's a lot of things that we lose in our education system when we focus on the go to college route, which is literally like all of high school is go to college. Like there was nothing else. It's like what happens after? No, we don't know.
Now that we're on the topic of like systemic education, I personally do not like systemic education. Like yes, like I study a lot. I follow like the path that people are telling us to do. Like but I disagree with it. Hey, like you said, in high school, they don't really say, learn this, like make sure you understand this topic. Instead, they're just like, I'm gonna prepare you for the regions, or I'm gonna prepare you for a specific test, whether it's like the AP exam, ACT, SAT, things like that. And you're like in college, and guess what happens when you're in college? You choose a course, we're preparing you for the final. I also don't like how people think that you only learn by going to school, going through some sort of system, right? What if this is a person that like studies a lot on their own outside of school?
One of those things, it's like known and like implied in the arts is that like if you have your master's, galleries are more likely to work with you because if you're doing your master's at a good art college, you must be serious about this. But it doesn't mean you'll be successful because it's not guaranteed your work is good, and two, it's also not very good for you as an individual artist. It doesn't teach you a lot,
and it really goes back to like this larger system, which is capitalism. Who are the people who are more likely to get a PhD, a master's? People who can actually afford college. Not everyone has the accessibility to go to college.
The system isn't equal. Like if you have the money, like it's easier for you to gain access to things.
Yeah, we've talked a lot so far about like the problem going through the system. What other, I guess, like specific challenges have you faced so far as an artist, and how have you overcome them?
As an artist, I think there's like very little challenge you face when you're a young artist and you're not trying to like, you're not really a business. I think it's very hard to find ways to commercialize off of what you're doing, or to make it sustainable in a way where you can sustain making art and getting paid to make more art. As a student, you don't do anything real because you're given the space for like a studio, or you're given the space for a gallery. It doesn't mean it has any like value to that space if you don't have anything good to put into it.
I find it interesting how you separate being like an everyday artist than being like a artist like as a career.
I think goes back to talk about like who are the people that are benefiting from the system, right? Which kind of artists are succeeding based on the system, and which kind of artists aren't, or what kind of arts are more paid attention to or have more money in them.
Yeah, which artists that are like surviving the system often tends to be like the artists who are like have that funding to begin with.
One of the things that you saying like who survives the system reminded me of this conversation I had with one of my high school teachers, where he was like, one of the two advices he ever gave me was about like college was, one, don't study painting. I don't know what he had against it, but he was like, don't do it, it's boring. And I was like, I don't know what you mean. But the second advice he gave me was that if you want to be a gallery artist, it's not really made for everyone. So one of the things that determine whether or not you succeed at the end of the 5-step program of getting your MFA, doing the whole spiel, and maybe having to kiss ass and like care or like cater to organizations you don't really care for, but you have to because they have the money and they can fund you. Whatever you have to do to survive that system, right? One of the things that my teacher told me, he was talking about this artist who I knew personally who like made it, now a gallery artist who's represented like worldwide, but like in like London and like other places in Europe and the US. So he was doing really well, and he was like the goal, right? And like I was like, okay, I can reach that. And my teacher was like, I don't think you can, because he had a lot of support from his parents to fall back on. He didn't have to pay rent for a while. Your career takes a while to take off, especially in the arts, and if you don't have the support for that, it's just not gonna work. That's why people end up choosing to survive or teach or do something in the arts, like curate or become an art historian or study something in the arts, stay in the network, but not become an artist. That happens.
It ties back to how like everyone thinks like, oh, as long as you go to college, you're good. But that's not always the case, because like there's always like whether or not you have the resources to begin with, whether or not you have like the privilege to begin with. Not everyone who goes through the system survives the system. I guess like still on the topic of like art school and I guess like careers, if you were maybe like 14 again, 13, like just entering high school, is there anything else you would do differently? And like what advice would you give to like young people who are interested in the arts and going to arts, interested in art school? What should they know?
If I like my 8th grade me, I would tell her to take it way more seriously, but also to actually do things that made me better. Because I think for a really long time I stayed doing things that I knew how to do. I think I want to keep doing things that like I'm not good at so that I can get better at.
People are afraid of like failure, but failure is like where you like learn. I guess like the last thing we talked about, we already talked for an hour. This is a lot of content. You're walking me through your portfolio. This sounds like a job interview, but it's not that serious.
I forget what this is called, but it's a watercolor and pen piece that I did based on a prompt. It was like a line from a book that was like about twins, about a mother hearing twins in her belly, and I made this illustration based on that, which my mom said she saw she saw a snake bite her feet in her dreams, and that's how she knew that she was gonna have a boy when she had my brothers. So she had that dream twice, so that's why the snake comes in with the pregnant woman. This is a pastel piece that was honestly me just studying hands. I think it's called a family portrait or something.
I find it kind of interesting how the last one, the hand on the bottom, is kind of like tied together, chained, in the sense that like not all like families have like good relationships with each, and it kind of feels like you're chained through like these blood ties.
I was trying to show like different ways you could be connected. It's like one way is to be trapped in it, and one way is to be holding on to it. This is a self-portrait. It's a huge painting. It's like 4.5 feet tall. This one, it's kind of layered, but it has something to do with like how the snake is portrayed in the Garden of Eden, but like in religious iconography, because I was studying a lot of like Renaissance stuff around this time. But I was thinking about the snake here in terms of this story I was told when I was little, about wearing the hijab because I was raised Muslim, and there's a story that they're told that if people not in your family see you unveiled, which is supposed to mean unveiling your hair will turn into snakes in the afterlife and bite you and like punish you for it. And that was always like a really like shitty point to have. It's like, oh, just because I'm a girl, I'm gonna have like snake hair that bites me. Anyway, I've made that into a painting. This is my response to it. This is a very complicated piece. This is me trying to do 3D art. I think a lot of my art that like kind of touches closer to home has to do with like religion and spirituality. I think it's called reaching. I casted my hand. I created this like candle. Basically, it's like I had to figure out how to make a candle out of candle wax and like, make that. But it's supposed to be still life of a moment of like prayer or like a moment of like reaching, because I always felt like God was always this thing people were reaching for. I was thinking about a lot of like architecture too, and like how
they try to build
like
towers to reach like heaven and things like that.
And also just like when you're praying, because like the Muslims pray like with their hands closed like this, and that was like one of those things where like the hand becomes a part of trying to reach God somehow, as if you can make it tangible. I think making it a candle had to do with like symbolism and how honey and light are symbols of heaven.
So yeah, thank you for talking to me today. Is there anything you want, like any last words you want to say to like the audience? Like where can they find you? Like where can they follow you and things like that?
Oh, my name is Mumtahina. So my Instagram handle is Mumtahina, Mumtahina _ and that's it. I don't really have a lot of stuff going on, but I have stuff like coming up, I think. But it's kind of all just in the moment, nothing big going on.
Okay, so basically you guys should follow her because you got a lot of things coming up that they should wanna check up on, right?